I was lucky enough to make it to 21 years old before I experienced what real grief felt like. Losing my granddad was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to navigate. After his death, a way I found to cope was reminiscing on all of the beautiful memories that I had with him. A reoccurring one was the many late nights I would sit with him and the stories he would tell. From the story of how he met my nana, to a made-up kitchen fairy that put away all of my dirty dishes. Grandad was an extraordinary storyteller. He had a way to have whoever he was talking to hanging on to his every word. A story that always stuck with me turned out to not be a story at all. It was real life. They say that every family has skeletons in their closet. Well, mine has witches. So No Head House is where our story begins. The exact location as to where this house is not accessible to the public for obvious reasons. In late 1710, Anne Hultred started experiencing weird things going on in No Head House. She began feeling stabbing pains in her back. She started seeing stones thrown through the windows. Her bedclothes were being trailed from the bed with no one seemingly doing it. This happened on and off until early 1711, when things took a turn for the worst. A young boy was found in the Hultred's home. Due to his clothes and the way he looked, they assumed he was a beggar boy. Well, eventually they caught him. They asked for his name, he wouldn't give it. They threatened to get the man of the house, and that seemed to scare him away. He vanished until a couple of months later. Whenever he reappeared, he was a lot more violent this time though. He began smashing windows. He was said to be threatening the family. He was found with a book of sermons that Anne had misplaced a few days prior, and when Anne had asked how he got it, he had threatened that the devil had given it to him and had taught him how to read it. After all of this, Anne got scared and she took her kids and all the servants and they hid in the parlour, to which the little boy stood outside and said that he could get in through the tiniest crack in the house, that the devil would allow him to come in and kill the family. After this had happened, they had contacted their local minister. Word had gotten around the small town of Islandmagee that strange things were happening at No Head House. Unfortunately for Anne, she fell very unwell after this had happened, to the point where she was convulsing all the time. She was bedridden, she was in constant pain, she was screeching through the house. And unfortunately for Anne, in early 1711, she succumbed to her injuries and she died. Amongst these family members was Mary Dunbar. She was said to have been around 18 at the time. She was a well-educated woman, she was a gentlewoman, and she was well-liked within her community. Soon after Mary arrived, she was informed of the strange happenings surrounding Anne's death, and rumours of witchcraft had come about. The same night she arrived, she had found an apron that was tied up in multiple knots, strewed out on the floor, that no one confessed to setting down. No one else in the house wanted to touch it, but Mary thought nothing of it, to which she picked up the apron and started to unknot everything. In doing so, when the apron came undone, there was a cap that had belonged to Anne that had been missing for several days, found within this. Unknowingly to Mary, she had disturbed a charm. That night, Mary began feeling the same things that Anne had, stabbing pains in her back, hearing strange noises, and began convulsing. She was then said to have been screaming, telling people to leave her alone, screaming at people that were seemingly not there. Whenever she came around, she was asked by the minister and the people around her who she was talking to which she said that she had seen a group of women surrounding her bed and were tormenting her. That is when she named the first two women Janet Main and Janet Carson. After Carson was named, the minister thought it best that he would bring her in to see what effect it would have on Mary. Whenever Janet Carson was brought into the room, Mary then began screaming her name, immediately naming her by her full name, and began having convulsions and fits again. Janet Carson was a local woman. She was then brought in and placed before Mary. Mary immediately began screaming her name and named her as one of the 8 figures that had been tormenting her. Mary continued to have fits and managed to name 2 more women. She named Janet Liston and her daughter Elizabeth Seller. Both local women were rounded up. Janet Liston refused to come to the house, but that did not work well in her favour. They were then forcefully dragged to No Head House. A large group of women were placed in front of Mary, to which she was able to pick out Janet Liston and Elizabeth Seller. The locals then started to know about the strange happenings going on at No Head House, and witchcraft was rumoured. Mary was then able to name a fourth woman, Catherine. The townspeople rounded up all of the Catherines, to which she was able to pick out Catherine McAlmond. Catherine had a bad reputation in the community for being irreligious and uneducated. Mary was then able to add a fifth woman, only named Latimer. The 4 women were arrested. The 4 women were sent to Carrickfergus jail. She had a vision of Janet Main and the woman named Latimer. She was then able to get the full name, Janet Latimer. Mary then named 2 new women, Mistress Anne and the second one nameless, but described her as only having one eye. Janet Millard was found by chance. She was brought in by fellow townspeople. She had one eye, she smoked tobacco and swore at the men. When placed before Mary, she immediately named her. Millard was arrested, and that brought the total women in jail to 7. Balls of hair and herbs pinned with needles were found in Janet Millard's home. Mary was still unwell and said that she was visited by Mistress Anne, who had threatened to kill her before turning into a spider and running away. Her condition worsened when her limbs started being tied up with balls of string. Her body was contorting really bad, and she then began vomiting up pins, hair, and then later added buttons to the mix. A woman named Margaret Mitchell was found and brought in and placed before Mary. Whenever she was there, Mary had no reaction, and Margaret was asked to leave, but as soon as she was gone, Mary had told and confessed that that was the Mistress Anne, but she was just too scared to name her in person. Margaret was arrested the next day. The trial began in Carrickfergus, and all 8 women were found guilty. 19 witnesses gave evidence. The trial was said to have been a mess, with stories and accounts being said in all order with no evidence, and the only physical evidence was the buttons and feathers that Mary had thrown up. All 8 women were sentenced to a year in prison and 4 visits to the stocks to be pilloried. The women's reputations would have been ruined forever. Soon after the trial, Mary returned to Castlereagh. However, she still fitted and vomited objects and did not show any signs of improvement. She then accused Janet Liston's husband, William Seller. He was arrested and tried. 3 weeks after the trial, Mary succumbed to her illness and unfortunately passed away. William's trial took a more serious twist, and due to her death, it was likely that he was executed. This would have made him the last witch executed in Ireland. William was the only male to have been convicted, and he was the last witch to ever be trialled in Ireland. So this is the plaque that was put in place for the 8 women and 1 man, William Seller. Catherine McAlmond, obviously, she was my ancestor. Whatever happened to the women after they were released from jail is completely lost. There's no records at all.
Now, Francis Hutcheson was a Church of Ireland bishop. He came in 1721 from England. He was a political appointee. He did numerous things, but he wrote a witchcraft book, a book against, prosecuting witches, called A Historical Essay Concerning Witchcraft. And so he was sceptical of it, he was sceptical of that you could prove the crime of witchcraft, and it was still a crime up to 1736 when he was writing. And so when I was looking at that, I found his diary in the Public Record Office, Northern Ireland, and he's wondering about his diocese. So he's wondering about County Antrim and County Down, listing witchcraft cases and listing, fairies and cunning folk and magic. So he's wondering about it and he's finding all these stuff. But the received wisdom was there's no witchcraft in Ireland. That's what the history books were telling you. It was left out of all the history books.
Okay.
And then I found all the documentation. I know there was somebody else looking at it a wee bit, but and there had been some popular books on it, but a historian hadn't looked at it. So that was it. I just thought, well, if there wasn't any witchcraft in Ireland or witch trials, what's this?